all the Italian wines are complex, are confusing, but it's
This is
not
true.
the fault of the producer or of the
No,
wines themselves. It's fault of the bureaucracy.
and I guess the history as well. When you have
Yes,
a
exactly.
2,000-year history of making wine, then there's a certain complexity that comes with that.
Exactly. And Valpolicella wines are no different.
Hello, and welcome to Book Club with the Italian Wine Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Hough, and I'm delighted that you're joining us as we get between the vines with some of the best wine writing out there. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and enjoy the show with the Italian Wine Podcast.
After a couple of episodes where we have been exploring the concept of pub culture, today we are very much back in the world of wine and very much closer to home with my guests today, Elisabetta Tosi and Giampiero Nadali, whose new book is entitled The Amarone della Valpolicella Vintage Atlas: What to Drink, What to Hold, What to Look For Year by Year, 1960 to 2022. Good afternoon and welcome to the show, Elisabetta and Giampiero. How are you?
Hello. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem, it's a pleasure.
Hello, everybody.
So you're both based in Valpolicella, that's right, isn't
Yes,
it?
we live in Valpolicella. We were not born in Valpolicella.
But you've been there for a while.
Well,
You know the area.
I come from Verona, so I am Veronese, but I moved in Valpolicella in 1993 for the precision. And I was when I was born in Verona downtown. Later, when I was 18, my family moved in Valpantena, another valley in the Valpolicella denomination, and then I moved in Valpolicella only in 1993, when also my adventure in the world of wine began as a journalist, I mean. So now I live here.
We'll come back to that adventure in a moment. What about you, Giampiero? Are you
Different story.
100% Valpolicella doc? Or?
No.
No, absolutely not. I grew up in Ferrara, a nice city in Emilia-Romagna. I studied in Bologna, and in the mid of the 80s, I moved in Verona for taking my very first job, and I was growing professionally in the field of marketing, technology, information technology, etc. And then I started to write my own blog here in Verona in 2005. And 1 year later, there was the opportunity to meet Elisabetta, and from that time, our roads crossed, and we continue this journey together, professionally.
And just for our international audience, what's it like to live in Valpolicella? What kind of place is it? Obviously, it's close to Verona, but what else can you tell us?
Well, Valpolicella is a countryside, basically. And there are many professionals who are moving here, especially in the last years, because all this kind of people is trying to escape from the city because there is too noise, and how can be living in a city. Also, Verona is not Milan, is not Rome. I mean, but anyway, if you love nature, if you love the natural rhythm, if you prefer to see many trees and vineyards surrounding your home, Valpolicella is a great place where to live.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's convenient for Verona, but it's also convenient for Lake Garda.
Yes, absolutely. It's strategic as a place because I can go to the airport in 20 minutes. I am at the airport in 20 minutes. I can reach the rail station, or in 1 hour and a half in Trento. so towards the Dolomites, toward the mountains, in 1 hour and a half on the opposite direction. In Venice, Lake of Garda is 20 minutes from my home. To me, is a great place where to live and where to work.
Yeah,
also
absolutely.
As a writer, obviously.
And just on that question, you Elisabetta, you're a freelance journalist, and our paths have crossed several times at various events over the years. But tell us a little bit about your career as a freelance journalist. What are you writing about, and where can we read you?
Well, I am a journalist. I've been writing. I've been writing since the last century. The last century, a lot of years, anyway, more than 30. So over the years, I collaborated with many different magazines. In the past, I was a music critic, but the music was not the commercial white music of today. I was a critic of African music, and it was a great adventure also. Over the years, then I began to collaborate with both Italian and international magazine. And when I began to write about wine, because living in Valpolicella is the best topic you can have, I collaborated with Wine Business International, more recently with Forbes.com. Now I have very few collaboration with Mille Vigne magazine, Cucine Vini magazine, Wine Meridian, online sometimes. Nothing more, because in the last month I've been more focused on our book.
Absolutely.
The Amarone della Valpolicella Vintage Atlas. Now I'm writing a new one, but it has not a title yet.
Okay.
I can only tell in advance that this book is addressed to foreign tourists who approach Italian wines for the first time, or almost. I am here for now.
Okay. And that will be in English as well?
Yes, absolutely. It's for foreign tourists.
Okay.
So it's in English, yes.
Okay. And Giampiero, you mentioned that your background is rooted in technology and the financial sector. What was it about the world of wine that drew you in, or that appealed to you? I guess living in Valpolicella, like Elisabetta, it's almost inevitable that you have some connection to wine. But what is it about the wine that really inspired you?
Yeah, my personal experience with the wine world started in downtown Verona. But when I started my journey in wine was due to the opening of my wine blog, aristide.biz. It's written in Italian, and very, very rapidly, in a couple of years, I decided to leave my day job and to start a consultancy activity with the help of Elisabetta. And we started our own personal job, and then I moved also in Valpolicella because, as mentioned by Elisabetta, I'm sure it's the perfect spot to live, to work, to enjoy your spare time, because it's in a very perfect strategic position right in the middle of the northern Italy. And so with so many opportunities, and of course the wine is one of the most interesting of them to me, and not only for me. And so this experience is mixed between my professional activity as essentially we help wineries and wine businesses using in the last 3 years, especially artificial intelligence, with also making some activities on working on data and content, helping them to work more intelligently to improve marketing, commercial decisions, direct to consumers, and all the arguments, all the topics related to customer experience. So that's in the very few words what I've been done in the last 20 years, more or less.
Very interesting. So trying to bring some of your business experience to the world of wine. You mentioned also your blog, and Elisabetta, you also are a prolific blogger.
Well, you are too generous. I don't think to be prolific because I write my blog, vinopigro.it or .com, and the name means lazy wine, as you know. I write only when I have something I consider to be interesting for my public. My public are the wine lovers, but also the wine professionals, because I love to write also about scientific topics related to viticulture or winemaking technique. So I usually write about topics of general interest or some breaking news that I have known before everything else when I'm so able to find it. And what can you expect from my blog? News, Italian and not Italian news, always about wine reviews sometimes, also wine book reviews, because there are some publisher who sometimes send me their latest volume, and I am always happy to receive something that can improve my knowledge. And obviously everything concerning wines. Pretty recently, I've begun to write in English too. So we have an international public who is listen to us. Go and have a look.
Yeah, absolutely. That's vinopigro.com.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. We'll put links to those blogs in the show notes so listeners can check those out. I want to now obviously turn the focus to the wine of Valpolicella. And I guess for you, Elisabetta and Giampiero, it's obvious what the wines of Valpolicella are, but perhaps for our international audience, the wines of Valpolicella can be quite confusing. It took me probably a couple of years to understand the different styles when I came to Verona, and what those names, what those superiore or classico or impasto or ciotto meant. So perhaps you could maybe, I know this is, it can be a complex subject, but perhaps for those who are not familiar with the wines of Valpolicella, could you just briefly explain what the various styles are?
Well, I fear that all the Italian wines are complex, are confusing, but it's not the fault of the producer or of the wines themselves. It's fault of the bureaucracy. Because
and I guess the history as well.
Yes, exactly.
2,000-year history of making wine, and there's a certain complexity that comes with that.
Exactly, and Valpolicella wines are no different. In very few words, we can say that Valpolicella wines are all red. If somebody show you a bottle of white wine and say this is the white Valpolicella, it's a fake. Okay, it doesn't exist. unless it is an IGT, not a DOC. Because in the past, in Valpolicella, producer, when there were no production rules, people cultivate everything. Okay, cultivated also white grapes with in the same vineyards with the red varieties, and they were used to make Valpolicella with both the grapes, white and red, and was okay for the time. But in starting from the 16 years with the production rule, when the production rule were established, the farmers had to choose, I cultivate white or red. Together I can't. And so they choose the red because the soils of Valpolicella are best suited to cultivate red varieties. So currently, all wines are made with a blend of red grapes. The interesting things, and this is common to all the wines from Verona province, all these grapes are local, are native, okay? Valpolicella wines are made with Corvina Gentile, Corvinone, Rondinella, and sometimes Oseleta, Croatina, and a few others local varieties. But the most important are these three: Corvina, Corvinone, Rondinella. The wines are the fresh Valpolicella, made only with the fresh grapes of the last harvest. The Valpolicella Superiore, you have to think to it as a sort of elder brother, because is a Valpolicella, but made with a little bit more ripened grapes and with a different period of aging, at least 1 year, sometimes even 2. So Valpolicella is fresh, is very, very easy to drink, is the first wine you can find on the market. Valpolicella Superiore requires at least 1 year of aging. And then we have the magic trio, Valpolicella Ripasso, because it's another Valpolicella, Amarone and Recioto. Ripasso and Amarone are dry wines. Recioto is the sweet wine. What do they have in common? They are made with dried grapes in different ways. And this is the most important difference. The difference between Valpolicella and Superiore is simply a matter of ripening and aging.
Yeah, that was excellent. Really brilliant summary of the wines of Valpolicella. You've really simplified that for us as well, starting from that very important point that if we talk about Valpolicella wines, we're basically talking about red wines, and then the various grape varieties, the importance of local varieties, the difference between Classico and Superiore, and then the three different types of wine process. Is there anything you want to add to that, Giampiero? Elisabetta has done a fantastic job there of summarizing the wines of Valpolicella. Is there anything you want to add?
Just adding a very small consideration about the scenario. We are the home of diversity, essentially, not only in Valpolicella, but I can say everywhere in Italy. So every few kilometers you can find different appellations, wines, and of course different food and so on. Just to give an idea, in Verona area, you can cross it from west to east. There are more, I think, less than 50 kilometers, and you can have the experience of any kind of wine exist in the world, starting from very light, sparkling white wines for, let's say, aperitivo, to very complex whites, reds, and also sparkling with, for example, Durello area, and finally also all the best, probably among the best sweet wines like Recioto della Valpolicella, Recioto di Soave. So a very complex environment, very complex panorama of taste and opportunities, of course, to travel, to visit, and to enjoy this very, very interesting diversity that we have. But this kind of diversity is replicated everywhere in Italy. Absolutely. So that's the big and funniest thing to do in our country.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we should make the point to avoid confusion that there are some fantastic white wines around Verona, if you think of Soave or Custosa or Lugana.
Absolutely.
But today we
Absolutely.
are focusing very
Yes.
much on Valpolicella. Maybe we can
Exactly.
come back at a
Yes.
future point and talk about the white wines. But today the focus is very
Uh-huh.
much on the red wines. So what are the pedoclimatic or the climatic conditions? What's the geography like that make it possible to have these really distinctive red wines?
Well, in my opinion, I think it's a combination, a combo of
Yeah.
three sectors mainly:
Mm-hmm.
climate, soil, indigenous grapes. Speaking about
Okay.
the climate, we have to remember that this region benefits from a temperate environment because we have the Lessini Mountains chain to the north, blocks the alpine winds,
Mm-hmm.
the harsh alpine winds, while Lake of Garda, not far from here, as I told before, acts as a massive thermal regulator. This way, it can mitigate summer heat, preventing spring frost. This not always it's so effective because in the I don't remember the year, but not many years ago we had some frost in the springs. Um, but the worst damages were in any way avoided. In at the same time, high hillside elevation ensure significant diurnal temperature shift when it's summer. We can have warm days and cool nights, which allow grapes to develop and so on, maintaining their acidity. And then there is when it's autumn, there are breezes, there are a natural ventilation that is perfect for the appassimento process, for the drying grapes. Because Amarone needs the grapes suited for make Amarone needs a healthy environment without the risk of rot. This is about climate. Then we have the soil, the other crucial ingredient, because the different zone in the denomination have a diverse mix of calcareous, limestone, clay, and also very ancient volcanic basalt. So, limestone provides drainage, and deeper clay retains just enough moisture during dry spells. The stony topsoils that you can find on the hillside terraces force the vines to struggle, naturally lowering yields, and this way you can produce highly concentrated berries with a more intense flavor. So, Lake Garda's unique microclimate, the mountain protection, and the complex soils create this particular and unmatched terroir that makes Valpolicella something unique.
Yes, very very interesting, and again a really useful summary of the very particular and varied conditions that you find in Valpolicella that make it such an interesting wine producing region. Again, Giampiero, is there anything you want to add at that point?
No, nothing particular, just a very little consideration about the fact that the territory here was modeled by a huge glacier that was staying on the area for a very, very long time, and it melted at the end of the last ice age, more or less 12,000 years ago. And this big retirement of the glacier produced the erosion and the formation of the valleys that we now have in the Valpolicella appellation. Essentially, we usually say that there are 13 different valleys. They are not all really valleys, but in any case, they are the result of the erosion made by the retirement of the glacier. And after that, all the other stuff that Elisabetta described before were the result of this process of retirement of the glacier. It's a very interesting and probably unique condition, especially because the glacier was sitting on the bottom of the ocean that we experienced in different parts of Europe, not only Italy. It was mostly calcareous, and after that, a couple of areas are volcanic, were hit by volcanic activity, and so we have also a couple of areas in Valpolicella that are very well known for different soils that add something to the calcareous character, So very, very interesting also from the point of view of geology. When we receive visitors here, we love very much to put the attention on these particular conditions, and there are also a couple of places where it's very easy to contemplate the results with a very wide view on the Lessini Mountains and the valleys just above, just below
maybe
them.
Just a good point to clarify or explain the meaning of the word Valpolicella. What are the origins? I understand there's some dispute about what the precise origins of the term mean, but what's your understanding of that?
There are two explanations usually, and one is very romantic, but it's totally wrong. And if you ask to somebody here, some local native inhabitant in Valpolicella, what does it mean, the name of this valley, Valpolicella? It means, they say, Valle delle Molte Cantine, because they mix two language, the Latin and the Greek. Polis means many in Greek, cellar, cantina in Latin, cellar. And unfortunately, it is not the real meaning, because we have to remember that the Adige River flows not far from here. It's a Pescantina is a village built on the rivers of this on the banks of this river. And in the past, the Adige was a way, was like a highway. People used to reach Valpolicella on the river by boat, okay? And they understood, they were in Valpolicella, they have reached the Valpolicella land when they started to see the banks of sand. So it's the name is actually means the valley of these
sandbanks.
Exactly. Now you cannot see them anymore because they don't exist anymore. But in the past, this was a sign. You are in Valpolicella, and the name comes from this fact.
Okay, so we have two possible explanations, I guess.
Yeah, one is marketing, and the other is history. Mine is history.
Okay. Turning now to what's in the glass, if you like, and if someone poured me a glass of wine from Valpolicella, how would I know what are its signature characteristics?
Yes, but after many years of tasting and also many years of comparison with other Italian and not Italian wines, to me, I recognize a Valpolicella wine not for the flavors, not for something you can feel, but rather something you cannot, something missing, the harshness. The Valpolicella wines, if they are well made, of course, are never hard, are never aggressive, because their tannins are always silky, velvety, caressing. So I think that more than a bunch of aromas of flavors, this is the tactile sensation, the texture of the wine on your tongue that characterized the wines of this region. Not, okay, that Valpolicella wine has as a signature the cherries, but also can have the cinnamon,
Yes.
or can be also fruity and spicy at the same time, and so on. But there are many other grapes in Italy with these similar flavors. However, the tannins of these grapes are, to me, are pretty unique.
Yeah, that's a very interesting way to look at it. What's absent rather than what's present. That's an interesting way to look at it. What about you, Giampiero? Anything to add?
No, this matter, Elisabetta is a master.
Okay. I still remember the first time I drank Amarone in 2011 when I came over to visit my wife, who was working in Verona at the time, and it's the word you said there, which was velvety. It was just this incredibly velvety wine. It was like nothing else I had ever drunk before. Is that right? What is it that makes Amarone so special from a tasting perspective? How would I recognize Amarone della Valpolicella in my glass? How would I know I was drinking Amarone rather than a Superiore? What would I notice?
Well, Valpolicella Superiore or even a Ripasso are different from an Amarone because they are more, how can I say, an Amarone is more round, more bold, more velvet, okay? And so there is a feeling of roundness, of smooth, of something truly smooth.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that a Valpolicella Superiore is not good as an Amarone, but it's different. It's also a very personal feeling. You have to try. You have to identify what, in your opinion, it's can be said in Amarone or can be said any other wine, even of the same region. But there is this difference. Amarone is something apparent, okay? Is an adult, a grown up.
Yes, you know it when you drink it.
While Valpolicella can be a teen, and Valpolicella Superiore can be a young adult, but not a complete adult.
Okay.
My impression is this: if I think to this wine as they were the individuals. There is something of complete, almost perfect in Amarone, and something in progress, a sort of work in progress in Valpolicella.
Okay, and you mentioned already the production technique, the drying of these grapes, this appassimento technique. What's the story behind that technique? Who were the first producers to recognize the commercial value of a so-called dry Ricciotto.
How many hours do you have? Because Amarone della Valpolicella story is quite long, not as a wine in itself, but the story of his technique of producing, of winemaking. Drying the grapes, we have to say, we have to remember, drying the grapes was, it's not unique to Valpolicella, was a widespread method in the past to get sweet wines. Greeks use it, Phoenicians use it, and then later Romans use it. They were used to dry the grapes, not only to make sweet wines that were the most important wines they could have, but also to have raisins. Raisins were an important food for soldiers because they are fast food in the pocket, always there, handy. Raisins and dried figs also. So the appassimento in Valpolicella is a very ancient technique which was never abandoned because of the cool climate of the region. In the past, Valpolicella was much cooler, was cooler than today. So the sweet wine Recioto is the father of Amarone and is a wine with a Roman origin. Recioto was and is now made with dried grapes. You take the grape, dried them, crush them, put the must to ferment. And if you want to get sweet wine, you have to stop the alcoholic fermentation at a certain point. This way, you preserve a bit of sugar in the wine. If you don't stop the fermentation, the yeast in the must consume all the sugar of the grapes. And rest assured that the dried grapes have a lot of sugar. The yeast consume all the sugar, they eat, metabolize all the sugar, and turn it in alcohol. And so, Recioto is gone, and you have an Amarone, a dry wine. Now, in the past, this accident occurred, I think, pretty often, because if you forget to pour and to pour the must from a vessel to another, and this way stopping the fermentation goes on, okay? And when it occurred, it was considered as a disgrace because nobody wanted to buy a so alcoholic, dry red wine. The people in Verona wanted sweet wine. They wanted to buy Recioto. Nevertheless, there were people who appreciated this strange Recioto, the dry version of Recioto, but they didn't sell it. They made it just for personal consumption. However, starting from the end of the Second World War, the people's taste changed. They began to appreciate foreign alcoholic brought by American soldiers, and so beverages such as whiskey, brandy, and this way they began to appreciate also Amarone. This didn't happen overnight, obviously, it required many years, and also the action of a few producers like Bertani and Bolla. They were the very first to figure out that people would have loved the dry version of Recioto more than Recioto itself. And they were right. The very first winery to sell the contemporary Amarone, the Amarone as we know it now, was Bolla in 1953. The vintage on the label is the 1950. Okay. And basically, Bolla is the first winery to sell the modern Amarone, because they are the only to have all the documents to prove. They began to sell Amarone in 1953, and they went on. They kept on selling it all the years after year, and so on. And to come our days, nowadays, Amarone della Valpolicella is made in the same way, with the selected grapes, dried for 3 months, more often less than 3 months, fermented, and then aged for at least 3 years from the year of the harvest. Obviously, over time, the rules of production have been updated because climate has changed. They are not, as I told before, the freezing winters of the past. And also the drying process is faster than it used to be. So I think that one of the big topic now in Valpolicella is exactly this. How many days do we have to dry the grapes to make a good Amarone? Because they cannot, if you want an Amarone, you must dry the grapes. You cannot skip altogether this kind of technique.
A fantastic history lesson, Elisabetta. Thank you very much from the beginning of Amarone and how it's made through the Second World War to the pioneering producers almost to the present day, and the challenges of climate change. So yeah, that really is an excellent summary of the history of Amarone. I understand there's a major turning point in the 1990s.
Yeah.
So we have these early pioneers, Bolla, you mentioned, Bertani in the 1950s, who began to produce Amarone, but it was really only in the 1990s. Is that right, that it became internationally, commercially successful? What happened then?
Yes. Well, that year I remember very well because, as I told before, I moved here in Valpolicella in 1993, and the explosion of Amarone, the Amarone year, I can say, was the 1997, more or less. But if we see at the 1990s years, I see 3 main factors in this decade. We have a shift in the tastes, in the global palate, because if you remember, I don't know, Richard, if you you were interested in the wine world in the 19...
Well, in 1997, I was at university in Scotland, and I would drink the cheapest wine I could find from the supermarket. So I had I didn't have the budget, certainly, for
yes, I think as all the students all over the world. But those were the years of Robert Parker and the blockbuster wine, basically. Right. And consumers suddenly wanted these massive, fruity, high alcohol red wines. And Amarone, with its rich concentration from dried grapes and naturally high alcohol, was the exact style the world was looking for. So was a lucky accident in this case.
Yeah. And was Robert Parker a fan of
I don't
Amarone?
know. No, I think not so much Amarone in the very first years, but because Robert Parker has always been a great expert of French wines. but the style was that fruity, the bomb fruit, we call it them, high alcohol, very dark colors, and so on. This was the first factor. First one. Two, second, technological improvements. In the 19th, the region began to adopt more modern technology in the cellar. When I moved in Valpolicella, I used to see cranes everywhere because everyone was renovating their cellars or expanding them to make a room for new fermentation tanks, new barrels, and, mind you, new barrique, because also this was the taste of the moment, the taste of the oaky, and also Amarone was that kind, in the 19 was the kind of wine. And also producers started using climate-controlled fruit drying sheds, not only large rooms with the big windows to open and close and so on, where you didn't know the humidity levels, the temperature levels, and so on. They needed to control also the appassimento process, because it was the most important phase in the winemaking of an Amarone. In this way, they could replicate more easily year by year a certain kind of style. And finally, the booming of the 19th economy created also a new class of wine collectors who began to buy the expensive Amarone, along with the expensive Bordeaux or Champagne. And to make an Amarone was and is very costly, very expensive for a producer. So the final price of a good bottle of Amarone cannot be low, ever. Cannot be low, ever. But there was, and we hope there still is a market for this kind of wines, for this kind also of well lovers. And at that time, and in the 19th mainly, the market recognized the high cost of production. And so Amarone also became an elite status symbol. So in the 1990s, we have the exact moment when Valpolicella's modern winemaking caught up with the global market that was desperate for big, luxurious red wines. It was the beginning of a great adventure, which lasts for more than 30 years. Now he is a bit slowing down, but there is still room for improving, for conquering also, I think, a new market for Amarone.
Absolutely. And again, very, very clear, Elisabetta. That's a fantastic description of the Amarone boom, if you like, from the 1990s, and the factors of fashion, technology, and the booming economy that lay behind that. I want to focus now specifically on the book. I mean, a lot of this history and geography and production techniques that we've spoken about, you discuss also in the introductory pages of the book. But the book is basically a vintage atlas, so it goes through each of the vintages from the 1960s to 2022, the latest vintage, I suppose, which is available, and it gives an in-depth analysis of of every single vintage. So my question was this one, which is a kind of fun question, if you like. Maybe Giampiero, you can have the first answer at this. But if you could choose any vintage, you could choose a bottle of Amarone della Valpolicella from any vintage. Which vintage would you choose if someone else was paying, of course?
Yeah, as mentioned by Elisabetta before, the 90s were such an incredible moment for the area. We had such a phenomenon similar to a big, huge planetary alignment, let me say. But this phenomenon was prepared in the 80s because we had three very, very important vintages in the 80s that we can say that they prepared the phenomenon for the 90s. You have to consider that in the 80s and in the 90s, we had almost 7 vintages that we can class, and also the producer normally class as 5 stars vintages. And 3 of them were in the 80s, the 83, the 85, and the 88. And then 4 in the 90s, the 90, the 95, the 97, the 98. So 7 great vintages in 20 years. In less than 20 years was such a big concentration of quality, but as mentioned before, also of technology, and also I think mainly expertise, because Italy experienced a very bad moment in the 86 with the methanol scandal, very, very important and very sad incident that involved the low quality producers of some wines in northern Italy. But we normally think that 86 was the moment where Italian wine began a different story, quite a different story. And as in many other economic phenomenon, we started with technology and other improvements, but mainly with a new kind of human capital, because a lot of people started to study enology and study agronomy. And then in the 90s, they took their position in the wineries and they started to produce the new class of wines. So,
sorry to interrupt. What is it that makes a great vintage? Are we basically talking about the weather? Is it sun, rain, cold winters, hot summers? What makes such a great vintage?
It's a mix of several factors. Usually it's climate and also the correct amount of time to make things to happen and things to wait to happen. Of course, you need in winter the time to and the climate to with the proper temperatures, very low temperatures, well below zero centigrades, in order to recharge, let me say, the soil. And then a summer that's warm but not extreme. We don't like grapes don't like extreme conditions. Not too cold, not too hot. And then a very, very particular factor that is very, very favorable here in Valpolicella, having good cool nights, especially in late August and September, in order to preserve, acidities, aromas, and also to fix in a better way colors is very important, and also to have healthy grapes, because we have this fresh air coming from the high mountains that during the night in a good vintage they maintain the grapes very, very cool and also very, very healthy. And then we have the harvest time, the moment when they are going to have harvest. Of course, since the beginning of the 90s, the the harvest time is every year a little bit anticipated, and then suddenly we have some vintages that were the due to the very fresh, let me say, August or September, so they can postpone a little bit the harvest. So normally they say that it needs 100 days to have a very perfect mature grape, starting from the blossoming of the vines in April or May. It depends. Then you have to wait 100 days, 110 days, not more, in order to have the perfect maturity. And then we have for Amarone, we have the process of appassimento. So you have to harvest a little bit earlier the grapes, and then you need a fresh autumn and a cold winter in order to have a good quality. Time here is absolutely the key factor. In some occasions, we have a technology that helps to maintain humidity, to maintain freshness in the rooms where they are drying grapes. But we have also a very good experience in artisanal producers that they simply have fruttaio, the room where they normally traditionally they dry the grapes, that has a very large windows. They are in a very good position on a hill with a lot of fresh air coming and removing humidity and so on. So they can wait the moment of pressing grapes at the end of the appassimento in end of January, or also in mid of February or end of February in some cases. So but by law of the disciplinary of the local consortium of producers of Valpolicella, they permit to start pressing in, let's say, early December, in some cases also November, middle of November. It depends, of course, of weather, climate, temperature, etc. So, and I can continue, but there are several aspects and factors to consider too.
And I want to ask you again, if you could choose just one vintage, what would you choose, Elisabetta, and you also, Giampiero? You mentioned the vintages of the 1980s and the 1990s, but if you could choose just one, which one would you choose?
I would choose if I could, but I cannot because I fear the bottle doesn't exist anymore. I would choose the 1988 Bertani, 1988. It was in Amarone that truly I found it absolutely amazing, because in aged wine I love the dried fruit. I love to recognize the nuts, the hazelnuts, the dried figs, the dried apricot, and I remember that wine. I tasted it. I don't remember how many years ago, because very many years, and I remember it was incredible wine for this taste. So dried fruit.
If I can read from the book, 1988 you describe in the book as a perfect year, heralded as one of Amarone's finest vintages of the century. The weather was near perfect, a warm, growing season.
In the vintage chart is a 5-star, so I think it was a great vintage, and also a great harvest, and a great resting grapes period, because also the appassimento period must to be good, as you know, not humid, warm, and so on.
My mouth, actually, I'm just reading through the wine characteristics, and my mouth is beginning to water as well. Just reading about this vintage. What about you, Giampiero? Could you choose a single vintage that you would?
Absolutely, and generally is not considered a 5-star vintage, but to me is probably one of the most iconic and most incredible vintages. It's probably one of the most old in absolute terms, and is the 64, and you can find it only at Bertani wineries. They are the only one that they have this vintage, and nowadays it sounds really interesting to have the opportunity to taste a 64, because it was current with an idea they have in Bertani's to produce an Amarone that was very close to the Burgundy style, to which the Bertani's family was used in the years that they lived in France during the Second World War. And when they came back in Italy, they had this idea to reproduce this kind of style in Amarone. And 64, for the time that was passed and for the approach in the style, represent perfectly this kind of vision. And now that in the more recent years, they are most of the producers, they are going back to this idea to search more elegance, balance, and that in a very simple words we say Burgundy style, but is such an incredible kind of quality. It's interesting how circular history could be, and you are coming back of this kind of vision. So to me, 64, for this all these facts that they are mentioning now, is probably absolutely the number one vintage, when probably everything started, and then it took 30 years to reach maturity, and all the factors, all the planetary alignment that I was mentioning before. And in the 90s, we got the biggest.
So that's the 1964 vintage, the 1988 vintage. I'm going to go for the 2012 vintage, which is probably better suited to my budget. And I think I've got a better chance of finding a 2012 vintage. But again, in your notes from the Atlas, it comes across as you describe it as sumptuous, powerful, and among the most opulent of the era. So that's one that I'm going to keep an eye out for, and check the prices of those next time I'm shopping for wine. I'm conscious of time, so just two more questions, if I can.
Please.
The first one is about how does a wine like Amarone della Valpolicella appeal to a younger generation of drinkers? We know that it's structured, we know that it's high alcohol, we know that it's expensive. So what are the challenges of selling Amarone to younger drinkers? And then finally, what about pairing? What would you recommend for pairing Amarone?
Well, we can speak about the style. I can see that currently the collective infatuation for oaky, powerful, very dark Amarones, 1990 style has passed. The trend is towards more balanced, dry, and even a bit lighter in alcohol, and this kind of Amarone, maybe it's more appealing for a young consumer. However, I have also to say that to me, Amarone della Valpolicella is not a wine for young people, because not only for a matter of money, because it's a cost, is expensive, as you know, but also because it needs a sort of no, it's not a matter of culture, of knowledge, it's a matter of taste. The tastes of people change when the people grow, and the taste you had when you was a child are not the same you have now. And so the same it happens with the wine. I doubt that a young, I say, in 20 years, 22, can truly, completely appreciate an Amarone, because it's a complex wine. It needs time. It needs I don't know, a mental approach different. It's not a spritz. You cannot chat. You can chat if you are drinking Amarone, but you need to focus. You need to put your mind better in the wine if you enjoy it. Otherwise, it's a beverage like any other. So I don't think it's for people, for young now. It will be in the future, but it's just a matter of a few years, not a decade. I mean,
Okay, that's a fair point. I mean, I guess it strikes me that it's like single malt Scotch whiskey in that sense. It's quite a complex drink, and not necessarily one that appeals automatically to a younger audience. So maybe you use a Classico or a Superiore as a gateway wine into Amarone. What about pairing Giampiero? Amarone has been described as a meditative wine, but is it also good with food?
Absolutely. We say now that with the changing we are testifying, we can find visiting the area, the changing in style reassure us that Amarone now is a serious food wine. The traditional positioning as a meditation wine, I think, is surpassed by history, and also, of course, by the consumer habits we have now. Becoming a more gastronomic, a more suitable kind of wine, because they are investing seriously in try to have a more enjoyable at the table with food, and not the usual pairings, with I don't know, cheese or some particular meat, etc. No, they are investing a lot of efforts, the producers and also restaurateurs. I can say that we are year over year we are enjoying more Amarone during our meals, and not only with the traditional positioning that meditation wine. I agree with Elisabetta. Amarone is a kind of a wine that is more suitable for maturity, but Valpolicella is also a very lucky wine region, because we have a lot of also alternatives, especially in the fresh grapes wines like Valpolicella, and particularly I'm very fond of Valpolicella Superiore, and we made in the past some efforts in order to push the interest of producer in developing also new approaches in producing grapes in specialized also vineyards, let's say crus, as the French normally says. And now we are experiencing very, very interesting, very nice, very good also Valpolicella Superiore. So we have alternatives, but again, Amarone now is more easy to pair and to experience during a meal. So,
what would be your classic dish? What would be your preference if you could have one without Amarone? What would you?
Risotto historically was with the Recioto. The Valpolicella now the most famous is risotto all'Amarone, and to me is one of the most preferred meals that we can.
Can I ask a question more? If you were eating risotto all'Amarone, would you also drink Amarone alongside that? Or
absolutely, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe a more younger Amarone, not so many evolved, but yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. Yeah. Delicious. It's one of my favorite dishes as well. So simple, but absolutely wonderful to eat when you're in Verona. It's a topic we could probably spend all day talking about, but I'm very conscious of time. Could you tell me finally then, where can we get a copy of this book, this vintage atlas, and where can we follow you on social media?
Both of us are in LinkedIn. I think that the better way is always to reach us at our blogs, Aristide and Vino Pigro.
Where can we get the book?
Amazon.
There is a landing page. We have also, we didn't mention it, but we have also another website that is commonly managed by both of us. And it was established in 2009. And the name is terroiramarone.net. And there is the landing page with all the links where you can buy.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I'll put links to those websites and blogs in the show notes. So thank you both very much. I know we've kind of rushed through a lot of material today, but it's been fantastic and a really fantastic insight and overview of Valpolicella and its amazing wine. So thank you both very much indeed for your time today. I hopefully will have the chance to see you both in person at Vinitaly.
Absolutely.
For sure. Thank you. Thank you to you, Richard. I am honored to be in Italian Wine Podcast.
Me too. And thank you very much. And also thank you to the...
Yes, for our listeners.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye,
Thanks for
everybody.
joining us on Book Club with the Italian Wine Podcast. Tune in again next month when we'll get between the vines with another great wine book. Remember, our show notes, including full details of all the books we've discussed today, are available at italianwinepodcast.com or wherever you get your